All right, let's talk a little bit about Photoshop Composite Images, or Photoshop Compositing as it's sometimes called. Here's an image I created for a client that was a staff photo. They were all dressed up as nerds, as you can tell, and they wanted to create this nerd poster. So what I did, initially I took a bunch of photos of them all together, but if you've ever tried to do that, you'll know that anything more than about 3 people in a photo gets difficult. It's really tough to get everybody making the face that they want, whether it's smiling or in this case they kind of have a serious vibe going on. But what I ended up doing to create this image was I took a picture of all of them, let's take a look here, separately, and the way I did that was went in and set my camera up on a tripod and then had them all step in and I took a photo. Now one thing you'll notice as I did this, I had them all try and stand on this line or as close to this line as I could get them to stand. That way I had a frame of reference as I cut these images out and brought them into Photoshop. You can see here I've got a line across the top of this machine, and it gave me a really good idea of how tall they were, so that way I could make a really believable depth of field. Some of these photos are just ridiculous, sorry. Anyway, all right, so what we did here, let's go ahead and open up this file and take a look. I'm going to open up Photoshop, and because the poster file is one of the most recent files that I opened, it's going to be in my recent files list here. There it is right there. And let's take a look. So what I did when I created this image, and you can see here I've got these guides. And these guides help me see how tall everybody is when I brought them in, cut them all out, and if I click on any of these and drag them around, all of a sudden it totally breaks the illusion, if it didn't already with me telling you. But we can cut all these people out, drop them in. You'll see I added some drop shadows by their feet. Let's take a look here. Let's zoom in a little bit. So I've got their feet here. Let me double click. These are smart objects. What that means is it remembers what the original file was set up as. So I've got an inner shadow going on here, just a subtle shadow, and some smart filters for coloring, and the shadow down here by their feet was done with custom brush work. So I can save this, place it in my main document file, and those changes will stay with me, but then I can always go back and edit them later. So anyway, you can see that I've made a lot of layers here for this project, and this is what I want to teach you, is how to create a Photoshop composite image. Let me give you a few more ideas of what's possible. So let's go ahead and open up Google, and let's search for Photoshop Composite or Photoshop Compositing, either one. There we go. And click on the images search here, and you can get a really good idea of some other things that you could do, just some ideas to get the creative wheels spinning here in your mind. I'm going to command click on these images, so by holding down command or control on a PC here, I can click on images that I'm inspired by or that I want to talk to you about here briefly. So as I hold down command and click, what it's doing is it's opening up new tabs here, and that way I can keep browsing while I'm opening new tabs to come back to here in just a second. So, all right, so the other thing about Photoshop compositing is it doesn't have to be people. It can be products or things. Let's say you want to put something on Etsy or on eBay, and you want to cut out your product and maybe make it look a little better or more appealing. This is another technique you can use for that as well. So here's an example of a product right here where we've got this piece of sod and clouds, and we have these streak marks behind it. So Photoshop compositing is a great tool, and that's why we're diving in. I think it's a really fun topic. So here's a few other ideas. Let's just look real briefly. We've got some really high contrast stuff going on here. This background, I'm sure, was not where it was shot. It was probably shot on a green screen. Here's another one where he's just superimposed over the top of a background. It's not as believable, mostly because of where the shadows and the lighting are coming from, but we can talk about that as we dive in here. So here's another one, really high contrast HDR type of a photo. Again, this background was probably placed after the fact. We've even got some light bursts coming in up here and things like that. So that's what I want to show you as we dive in here. So first things first, go ahead and do a little more research, figure out what you want to make, whether it's a photo of yourself or if you want to use one of the assets I've provided. I'll provide some of these photos that you can use to cut out and work with, or feel free to take a pause real quick, take a picture of yourself. When you do, make sure, let's look at these photos I took real quick. Make sure you give yourself space to cut all the way out around the image, okay? So don't crop the image too close, so that way you have room to work. The other thing is, let's say you want to make an image. Let's just look at pexels.com. This is a great freebie resource for free images. You can search for beach or forest or city or coffee shop or any kind of a background you want to find. Let's just pretend you wanted to use this one here. If you were going to use this, let's look at where the light's coming from. It's coming from the top left here. So if you take a picture of yourself, make sure your lighting and your placement of your lighting is kind of in the same vicinity. That'll help the image look a lot more real and believable once you dive into the project here. The other thing is, if you're sitting straight on, it wouldn't look quite as real as if maybe from like a 3/4 angle, so maybe sit on a stool or something. So just some ideas as you start to gather some assets and resources to create your composite image. So, all right, go ahead and take a second now, go take those photos or open up the project files, and we will dive in with the next video.